Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second taping of the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club Open Forum. Tonight, we are discussing 501c3s and foundations related to Lions clubs, particularly in Hawaii. Tonight, I'm joined by Chris Tamura, who's representing the Lions Club International Foundation, and past District Governor Bob Lee from the Hawaii Lions Foundation. And I'll be very briefly, because I know many people don't want to watch these videos for me, discussing the Hawaii Cyber Alliance Foundation. Couple ground rules for everybody in attendance tonight. If you are on video recording, if for some reason you need to step away from the recording and you're not particularly dressed for the occasion, please be sure to disable your video before you step away. Also, please mute yourselves to prevent any unwanted background noise or partying in the background to be on this video. If you're watching at home on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. That said, I will turn it over to Chris Tamura to kind of talk to us a little bit first about LCIF, what it does, and its involvement in District 50 Lions across Hawaii.
I better unmute myself first, otherwise, we have another gaffe here. Thank you, Lion President Chris Lee, past District Governor Bob Lee, members of the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club and associates. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight to talk about Lions Club's International Foundation. And I'm going to use the acronym LCIF throughout my whole presentation, so that's what it means here. What is LCIF? By the way, can I share my screen? LCIF, we've been serving our communities worldwide for over 50 plus years right now. And so we're in our next century of service. What is LCIF? LCIF is basically the funding arm of Lions. So basically, what does that mean? Lions, we do the service. But how do we do the service? Sometimes we need funding. So Lions Clubs International Foundation will provide funding for various service projects that Lions do worldwide and locally. And as a member of Lions Clubs International, this is your foundation. So you are all a part of LCIF. What is LCIF's mission? The mission is to support the efforts of Lions Clubs and partners in serving communities locally and globally, giving hope and impacting lives through humanitarian service projects and grants. So again, LCIF is the funding arm of what we do as Lions. And as Lions, we need money. You ask any foundation, what is the core of a successful foundation is money. So Lions Clubs International Foundation started a Campaign 100, empowering service. And it started in July 1st, 2018. And I believe, past District Governor Bob, that's when you came in as District Governor. So it is a 3-year program. It was supposed to end this year, but they've extended it 1 year due to the COVID situation. So it's actually going to end in June 30th, 2022. And what is the objective? The objective was to raise $300 million worldwide and service 200 million people every year. So it's pretty lofty goals, but why do we need all of this money? Again, $300 million raised throughout the whole campaign, extended to 2022. But why do we need this money? It is to increase our service impact. There are 4 pillars of service that Lions Clubs International Foundation does. It's basically, one of them is vision, supporting vision, blind and visually impaired, and trying to prevent, fighting preventable blindness, supplying screening equipment. Now, a little girl who went to a vision screening for Lions Club, went to a Lions Club vision screening, and she was found that she had a detached retina, and she eventually, lost her eye. And the Lions Club of Bloomfield, New York, what they did was they provided her even with a prosthetic, and she was just so happy to have a new eye. And so that's one of the kind of a touching stories that LCIF does help support. Another area that we do support is youth. So some of our Lions Clubs in Hawaii, we have a Leo Club. And Leo Clubs are also supported by LCIF through funding grants. And as well as there's a thing called Lions Quest, which really takes place worldwide. It's more popular worldwide, but not too much in Hawaii. We also, another pillar of service is disaster relief. And disaster relief, we can feel the impact of that. We've had disasters in our past, hurricanes that came through Hawaii, as well as other floods, etc. And so LCIF has contributed to Hawaii in that regard for disaster relief. And also on the worldwide scale, also they've contributed to like the tidal wave in Japan, for example, earthquakes throughout the world. So anytime there is a disaster, LCIF is there to help. There's also humanitarian efforts that we also support. And what Campaign 100 is attempting to do is to expand the level of humanitarian efforts that they support throughout the world. So the areas in which they wanted to expand in is, for example, hunger, supporting food banks and food drives and food distributions, supporting the environment, like supporting park improvements and cleanups. They also, another big area that they wanted to expand support in is diabetes, fighting diabetes, which is one of the largest diseases throughout the world, by providing equipment and doing screenings and assisting on diabetes camps for children. Another area that I had a video for was supporting childhood and pediatric cancer. I had a video that showed a little child who was limping, and they couldn't understand why he was limping. And so he went to the doctors. They couldn't figure it out. They finally found out he had bone cancer, and how the Lions assisted this child in getting the proper medical treatment. And now he is basically cured and free of cancer and living a pretty normal life. So, these little stories really affect our perception of the world and how we can contribute. It also makes you feel really proud of our foundation and what it's doing and how it's supporting our various communities worldwide. So how are these areas of service being funded? There's all different types of grants you can request. You can request, there's areas in childhood cancer, diabetes, hunger. There's like matching grants. There's a Site First grants. There's Leo grants. So those of you who have Leo clubs, there is possibility of requesting grants for Leo projects that the Leos want to put on. There's also Lion Quest grants. The two I want to really talk about, one is the disaster grant, which we actually received. It's basically the district governor can request $10,000 from LCIF, and they'll get it together right away if there is a local disaster in our area. So recently we had the big floods in the beginning of the year. So our district governor, Garrett Ogawa, he requested $10,000 in funding, and we provided funds for these grants, for these floods. Last year, we also had an emergency grant because of the COVID relief. So we were given $10,000 for COVID relief, and your Cyber Alliance Club also received $4,000 as an emergency grant to fund the face shield program. So you can see that it's not only a global issue support, it's also locally that we are supported. Another thing that we can also request is the which is called a district and club community impact grant. So out of every dollar that you donate, any unrestricted dollars, I should say, you donate to LCIF, 15% of that dollar or 15 cents comes back to our local communities. So for example, if our district donates $10,000 in total, it has to be at least $10,000 in total. 15% of all monies raised or donated will be accumulated for that year and will be available for us to use for any service type project that matches the mission of LCIF. So I think, was it last year or 2 years ago, we had a District 50 blind picnic. And that was funded by a community impact grant from LCIF to hold that picnic. So there is funds available. And so what happens every year, let's say we donate 10,000 this year, $1,500 of that is available for this year. Let's say we don't use that money. It carries over to the next year. So if next year we raise $1,500 again, we donate 10,000 again, we raise 1,500 for our local communities, $3,000 is now available. So this amount accumulates over a period of 15 years. And so basically it's a rolling 15 years. So if we don't use the money earned in that first year, it drops off. But basically we can accumulate a lot of funds in this program. But the one thing is we need to donate to LCIF. Clubs, on the other hand, if a club donates $5,000, the club will get at 15%. So let's say if we don't donate, if a club doesn't donate 15%, $5,000, it gets rolled into the district funds. But if a single club donates over $5,000, 15% of that money will be available for your particular club. So it is giving back to the local community also. How can a club engage? Well, that's basically up to you. You can do 100% participation club. So my Pro City Club, what we did was we donated, in addition to our normal donation, we donated $5 on behalf of every single member in our club. So we had 64 members, so that was whatever that amount is. But so now we were considered a 100% participating club. It become a 100-100 club, where every member of your club donates $100 to LCIF. You can host a fundraising event. I'm not sure if anybody saw the telethon, the LCIF telethon that happened over this past weekend. So basically it was a 3-hour telethon. It could have been 4 hours. I think it was a 4-hour telethon. It was all virtual. We had a lot of people performing. We had various testimonials. And that's where I kind of got these 2 videos I had. I wish you could see them. Maybe I can forward that to Peggy later, which you can distribute to your club members. But they had a telethon event, and it raised $700,000 in the weekend. So it was quite successful. So some clubs here in Hawaii also hold fundraising events, and they say, okay, we're going to designate 25% to LCIF. So clubs can engage LCIF by holding a fundraising event. You can also just write a check and make a gift from the Treasury. So what I would suggest, though, if you do make gifts from the Treasury, do it through a Melvin Jones application. So your club gets credit to become a Melvin Jones. And I'll go into that a little later. So what happens with that money, it accumulates in your account, and you can maybe use this Melvin Jones balance or these funds to maybe confer a Melvin Jones Fellow to one of your members, or deserving members. I think the Hawaii Kai Lions Club does that every year. They designate a Melvin Jones Fellow. A Melvin Jones Fellow is basically, if you donate $1,000, you become a Melvin Jones Fellow. And you get this designation each time you donate $1,000. You can invite non-Lions to support LCIF. If any of you know any foundations who would like to contribute to worthy causes, you can have them donate to LCIF. Or you can become a model club. Basically what a model club is if you take your membership, if say you have 10 members, you have to average $500 per member, and you become a model club. You get all these designations and accolades throughout the world as being a model club. So So there are, all kinds of ways that you can participate. What I do is I take a certain amount of, I donate $85 a month, because at the end of the 12-month period, I've donated $1,000, and it gives me a Melvin Jones Fellow. So I do that every month. I don't see it every month, and it's a painless way to donate. And it doesn't have to be $85. It can be $5 a month. It can be $5 a quarter. Whatever you can afford, every little bit helps towards supporting the worldwide needs. And the one thing we can be proud of is that 100% of our donations are used for programs and services. So some nonprofit organizations, maybe 7 to 10% of their money actually goes to pay administrative costs. We don't have that, because our administrative costs are paid through investments that we've set up. So 100% of your donation affects who you want to give to. Again, individual giving. If you donate, let's say $20, there are various pins you can earn, and there's other things you can also earn. But the main ones are the lion's share pins. $20 gets you the single star. $50, $100 gives you the 2 stars, and $200 gives you the 3 stars. So you can earn pins along the way. And again, a Melvin Jones Fellow. If it's the first time you're donating $1,000, you get this plaque, and you get a small little pin that says you're a Melvin Jones Fellow. For each progressive $1,000 that you donate, you can get a tiny little diamond. I'm not sure if you can see what I have. Oh, let's see. I have a sample of the pin here. Here it is. So these are like 4 or 5 pins on diamonds on there. But for each $1,000 thereafter, you get a small little diamond, and it turns to yellow, the sapphires, etc. Past District Governor Bob Lee has a whole bunch of different types of stones on his pin, I'll bet, because he's been a major donor to LCIF. And so that's one of the biggest recognitions that you can get from LCIF, is being a Melvin Jones Fellow. That's kind of concludes my speak here. Too bad I didn't have that video, because the video was really touching videos of how children are impacted by things in life, and how LCIF is there to help them.
Yep, thank you, PDG Chris. I'm gonna kind of change the format on this just a little bit. I'm gonna take questions, if it's all right with everybody, at the very end. And then that way if necessary, we can take the questions and kind of have brief dialogue, I guess, with both PDG Chris and PDG Bob, if that's all right with everybody. Okay, nobody's making faces at me right now. That's good. Okay, I'll turn it over now to PDG Bob Lee to talk about HLF.
Well, thanks, Lion Chris. Good evening, everybody. So you've heard about our international organization, LCIF. Well, the Lions of Hawaii have a foundation similar district-wide, and that's your Hawaii Lions Foundation. Every member of the district is a member of HLF. And we do similar things at HLF as LCIF. We're the fundraising arm of the district, and we're also the 501c3 arm of the district. So therefore, if we receive grants from other organizations like the Elephant Trust or the Jack Lord Foundation or the Hawaii Community Foundation, we are the suppository of those funds for the district. We have many programs. Many of you know the primary program of HLF, which is the Lions Eye Bank of Hawaii and Makana Foundation. Now, how many of you know that we run the only eye bank in Hawaii? Raise your hands. Okay. So, that's a fantastic goal. We've helped over 5,000 individuals in Hawaii gain their sight because of the cornea transplants that we provide. But we also provide other things for the district. The activities, all the activities run by the district is funded by HLF. So if you're a committee chair and you need funds to run a district program, your budget for the year comes from HLF. So we are the activity funding arm of the district. We are also the grant giving arm of the district. If clubs need additional funding to provide services or a program or a project, and you don't have sufficient funds at the club level, the foundation is here to provide some type of funding for those programs through a grant and aid program. Currently, the limitations for the grant and aid, I think, is at $3,000 per project, but that's available to any club in the district who wants to run a program and needs funding. So that's another valuable service that HLF provides. The HLF also provides emergency grants. You've heard Lion Chris talk about LCIF and the disaster relief grants. Well, the district also provides disaster relief grants, and it's in addition to what LCIF provides. As Lion Chris will tell you, the LCIF grants have certain limitations as to how those funds can be used. The disaster relief grant that comes from HLF helps to cover those other expenses that cannot be covered by LCIF, but is greatly needed to cover disaster relief funding and support throughout the islands. Many of you remember the eruption in Kilauea a few years ago. LCIF stepped in and gave the lines of the Big Island $10,000 disaster relief, but HLF also provided another $5,000 to $10,000 to provide funding to purchase items that the LCIF grant could not be used for. So that's another layer of service and grants HLF provides. So really, HLF is here to provide funding, to provide support, and really, this is your foundation. And iBank is the primary part of it, but we do many other things that many Lions don't really seem to know. We're one of the best kept secrets in the district, unfortunately. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll answer questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, PDG Bob. And God, it feels weird being the moderator and somebody who's going to be speaking a little bit. This feels very weird. All right, so I'm just going to kind of give everybody a very brief overview of what the Hawaii Cyber Alliance Foundation is. We incorporated last fall, but we've got our 501c3 approval, I believe, around January or so. And the purpose of the Hawaii Cyber Alliance Foundation, and I'm going to quote the exact purpose from our Constitution, is health and purposes, and to provide support and assistance to charitable organizations, primarily in communities of locales where our members reside. And the reason we worded it that way is because we have members not only across the state, but we also have members in the mainland and in some instances even outside of the country. So we acknowledge that in those communities have their own struggles and their own issues that may pop up from time to time. So we want to show our members in those communities that are not within our own here in Hawaii that we're still there for them as well. We also, one of the things is PDG Bob mentioned about being one of the best kept secrets in the district. Hopefully we can kind of take that title off of HLF at some point, because one of the things that we've tried to do this year as a club, on the club level, is to try to create partnerships and groom partnerships with other organizations outside of Lions to again show that we're there to provide support. That's something that we look forward to being able to doing as our foundation grows as well, to find the smaller organizations that don't have whether it be administrative support or or bigger operations that we can help provide some type of financial assistance to help them achieve their goals, whatever they may be. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the Hawaii Cyber Alliance Foundation is. As everyone in district knows, we did the 3D PPE printing project last year, and Lion Peggy was really the muscle behind that, one of the main muscles behind getting that project and all the effects put through. If the Hawaii Cyber Alliance Foundation were around at that time, we'd probably be contributed more to the production of that project. And it's initiatives like that we hope to be able to continue moving forward in the future. Anyway, nobody tuned in to hear me talk, so I'm gonna stop there. But that said, I will take questions from anybody who may have questions for any of our speakers. Please don't all rush at the same time.
I have a question, and that is just quickly, we do have as an associate member, Sheila Doncaster, on the call, and she is a trustee with the Kamehameha Lions Foundation, and I wondered if Sheila has anything she could add to what the three of you have already said about the kinds of things that maybe the Kamehameha Lions Foundation does that might be similar or, in addition to what's already been discussed.
We set up our foundation just for ease. Our foundation was established in 2007, and it was basically to separate our money and be able to keep it in pockets that we wanted it to go to. So we have 4 Leos clubs, so each one of the Leos club has a restricted account. So their dues go into that. Their scholarship money goes into that and is paid out of that. We give Leo scholarships every year. We also keep, the majority of our money goes into the foundation because people usually want a donation letter. So it was a housekeeping thing also that we did. So for our fundraisers, when we did Laugh for Lions, people wanted a receipt for their ticket, and we do a silent auction at each of those, which is our really biggest cash crop at all of our fundraisers. So anyone who donated something to the silent auction would get a letter, and it just helped us with housekeeping. The other thing that we use it for is we have ongoing projects every year, and so that we don't have to bring it up to the board and have approval done each year, we can actually have restricted accounts for the projects that we work on, like the Leo's accounts. We sponsor 2 homeless veterans shelters, one in Kalihi, one in Kailua, and we sponsor a room there. So when they first did that, we set it up so that that money is restricted and set aside, so I can just go to them and say in January, okay, it's a new year, we want to renew our subscription, and I can just send an email to the treasurer and he sends me a check and I present it to that house. There's another, IHS is getting into doing boutique houses within the community, and another one is going up in Pearl City. It's being worked on right now, so I haven't gotten any information on that, but might be something that Leo's clubs in that area might want to get in and on the ground floor and sponsor a room, have our sign on the outside of it, and give them the support that they need. So it's basically for ease to get a check for anything that we need to do our donation letters. We have separate boards on both of them. So the birthday parties and that sort of stuff are paid out of our club, but none of the officers, the president, the vice president, secretary, or treasurer, can sit on both boards. So if you're a president of the club, you can't be the president of the foundation. So it keeps it really clean and strict. The meetings are open to all members. Steve Inouye was on our foundation board for many years until he passed away. So it's really good to get another club involved on how we work things and get a different perspective. So that's basically how we've done our foundation, and it's worked real smooth, and and real easy. So that's why we did it.
Thank you, Sheila.
Mhm.
Hey guys, PDG, Chris and Bob, I had a quick question for you guys. You guys talked about if there's, I guess, disasters in our local community that, and then they request funding, they can get funding from both LCIF and HLF. I guess, do the two organizations interact as far as like joint grants or things like that?
I would say no. Pretty much, like, for example, if a disaster occurs, it has to be a certified disaster also. The district governor can just request money from LCIF. So there's no interaction with HLF. The district governor just requests the funds, and it's pretty much, if it is a legitimate disaster, it gets funded.
And I think there is a little interaction, because sometimes the disaster relief check actually comes to HLF, and HLF is actually the one that really keeps the funds to make sure that it's spent correctly. But one of the ways that we work together, and I've mentioned it before, is LCIF has very strict rules as to how the funds can be used during the disaster. So the foundation makes it easy for the district governor to request funding from the HLF portion of the disaster fund. And those funds are a little bit easier to use in terms of things that LCIF normally won't pay for or can't pay for. So we work hand in hand, but we make it very easy for the district governor to get those funds, to make sure that the people at the disasters are taken care of as best as we can.
Chris? Yeah, and so I wanted to kind of follow up on that. So we have kind of three layers or three levels of foundations here, of course, the national, the state, and then the clubs. When we did the PPE project, we got grants from both LCIF, HLF, and then of course we had some club donations as well that went in forward with that. And because of the different parameters on what you can use funds for, it was useful to be able to have different sets of funds so that you could get everything done that you needed to get done. So it'd be interesting to see if there was some way that we could find to understand some of that or integrate that better at times. I mean, it worked out fine. No complaints at all. I mean, everybody was really good on all fronts with respect to those two grants that we got from LCIF and HLF. But it'd be interesting to see if there's not some way to not improve the coordination, but just make it clearer for people as to what they can do with that stuff. But it worked out. I think it'd be nicer to find some way to kind of clean it up a little bit.
Sometimes it's not really easy. It's like, there's so many complex rules, because I guess as a 501c3, what a 501c3 is, basically people can donate to your organization and get a tax deduction. So there's various rules that you have to be sticklers about, and it's not always easy. I mean, because you have sharp guys like yourself, Lion Loyal, that it made things easier for the processing, but to the lay person, they may not have that intrinsic knowledge as far as why you need to have everything the way it is, how everything has to be in order, how it has to be documented. And so everybody has, most 501c3s have different documentation rules, but they have to be really adhered to.
Yeah, it seemed to me that the LCIF was, and understandably so, since it's a global program, right? Not a state program or a club program, it's a global program. So it has to look at the whole suite of potential things that could go wrong with the funding, because you're moving it into all over the globe, right? So you've got to come up with something that is pretty clean, to make sure that, the money goes where it's supposed to go. And that worked. I don't know. It just seems like we've got all these great opportunities for potentially trying to find ways to tear off of it. And maybe it's easier to tear off of the HLF because it's more local and it has fewer, it doesn't go global to where it has to deal with all kinds of different country lines and everything else.
Well, I think that's the reason why the LCI grants are really tailored. They're very stringent as to how it can be used. And that's why I think the HLF disaster grant is a little bit more flexible, because we understand how strict the disaster relief funding from LCIF can be. So I think there's a little bit of looseness at the HLF Foundation portion of it, because there's no set parameters for different types of disasters. Different disasters may require different types of materials or supplies or support. So I think it's good that we have a really structured disaster relief program at LCIF, and we have a little bit looser one at HLF, so we can kind of fill the voids, per se, when the needs are there.
Sorry, Naomi, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just I wanted to ask for, I mean, because you guys are mentioning like the different rules for how these different funds can be spent, but it's kind of abstract to me. So could you guys give like, especially maybe like the PPE project, because that one you mentioned, Laura mentioned that he dealt with all the different funding, and then so like what's an example of like, like funds from LCIF could pay for this but not for that, and funds from the Hawaii branch could pay for this but not for that.
Well, from like an LCIF standpoint, if I speak for the emergency grant, for example, for the recent one we received, it can only be spent on food, water, blankets, clothing, very restrictive. It has to be almost like tangible items. You cannot donate to, let's say, the Red Cross to go and have them do some work. It has to be for direct goods or services on the LCIF. And maybe, lawyer, you might have some idea. I'm not sure what your grant exactly said, and so it would have been funded. You would only have to spend the funds on certain things based on whatever your grant application designated.
Yeah.
We also have Frances Lum on the line too, and she had to do a lot of the research for the LCIF one too, so she might be able to help as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Frances can jump in, and then we get to see her also if she has to. Well, actually, she'd probably just go by audio, but nonetheless, we could force her to not be so shy. But I'll take one quick shot at it. I mean, in general, I think a lot of the foundations don't like to buy equipment, for example, that you're trying to do. So we needed to get printers. So we had to find other ways to get the printers. So we wouldn't get those through either LCIF or HLF. And sometimes there's not a total prohibition on doing that. It is more of a preference not to fund equipment. But within the actual LCIF grant, it went really well. I mean, once we got the money, the district was really quick at getting that down to us. They turned it over to us. We had to document everything, but we documented everything anyway, so that was not a problem. But there were some, as Chris Tamura had laid out, there are certain things we couldn't do. We had to be the original buyers of things. You couldn't put something down to somebody else if you wanted them to do like a subcontract on something. You needed to go. You had to be the doers kind of on it. There were kind of time requirements on stuff, on when you had to get stuff done, how long it would last, 6-month period to have things wrapped up, little things like that. So it was more restrictive, but it was not onerous in my mind. The major thing was just that we knew we weren't going to get equipment funded through most of the other foundations, and we had to rely upon other means to do that. Frances can add more if she would like to, if she's still on.
Frances doesn't remember very much already. All of that has been washed from the brain. But
Yeah. But LCI was a pleasure to work with. The district was a pleasure to work with. Everybody worked out fine. They really wanted to see us succeed. Yeah, so that was.
All I
that was
can
not a
say though
problem.
is, Naomi, in answer to your question too, is that thank goodness we had Frances who was doggedly looking, she said, okay, I'll go check out the LCI website, I'll look into grants, etc. And I think what's coming would be helpful after we're through today is maybe having a checklist of some of the things that are required for the various levels like LCIF, or you might say, as you guys talked about, LCIF and HLF does disaster and emergency stuff, and these are the things, and just know neither of them will pay for equipment. So our project would not have worked if we didn't have people like Gavin and Alan, willing to and Rich to buy their own printers, because I don't know what the reason is, but for some reason that would have stopped us in our tracks to begin with. But Frances, you definitely did a lot of research and had to figure out what the criteria was and to draft your grant application to respond to the specific questions, because if we didn't, then they came back and said, clarify this and that, right?
yes, that's very true, that even though we thought we had answered the question or filled in the blanks appropriately, they still had questions. So this part of it is trying to anticipate somebody who knows nothing about this project, what might they be thinking about and asking. But Loyal had to keep track of the money and made sure it was spent appropriately. So he had the lion's share of the job there, the bookkeeping stuff.
Yeah, and some of the wording's not always clear, Naomi, when you do it, and you just have to kind of assume that you can figure it out. It kind of implies that they want like checks to actually be used. The reality is it was just a check from the district to us, and then we could go ahead and use Amazon online, for example. But it was kind of worded like LCI was talking to us, but they really were talking to the district who had to oversee this to make sure that we didn't do things stupid. So they were the parent in the room, so to speak, to make sure that we did things right. But it was my first question was like, oh my God, we got to use checks. I'm going to die. I'm dead. I won't survive this project for sure if I can't, because we couldn't buy anything locally. It was all from the mainland. Almost 95% of what we bought came from the mainland. We did get eventually some stuff locally, but it was almost nothing. Amazon makes it easy. I can still go get in and see exactly what we bought with everything, so that's easy to do. But some of it was just the translation and talking to Chris Tamura and others that, you didn't quite read that right, Loyal. That's for the district to worry about, not you guys, and that kind of stuff. So that was good, but it all worked. We got money from both of those groups, and it was really helpful. We wouldn't have been able to do as much as we did without their help.
District governor really has the authority to request the grant. You need that district governor's approval. And yes, the district has oversight of it because they're going to be the eventual responsible party to report back. Because if you don't complete and close out your grant, it may stall future grants. So they may say, hey, you still have this grant open, so we cannot give you a future grant because this grant has not been closed out. And LCIF does recognize that, it is a arduous process to get these funds. And of course, as Ryan Loyal mentioned, that it's a worldwide distribution thing that they're doing. I'm gonna send, I see line 10 is your LCF coordinator. I can send him a link. It's called a grant toolkit. And so it can navigate, you can take a look at that grant toolkit. It's made by LCIF. And then you can maybe see the various paths you can take towards what kind of grants you can use.
Is there anybody else who's on this call who is a club LCIF coordinator who might like that information as well? Okay, never mind.
Are you gonna email it out? Could I just see it just to see it?
Maybe Chris, you could share it with all of us.
Yeah. So what happened? what should happen is your LCIF coordinator should receive it and be the distribution point for all your members. So I think
maybe it's not happening.
Or
Hey,
maybe I'll see.
hey, PDG Chris, I had a quick a follow-up question to that because I know people who are not in on this call are gonna who are gonna be seeing this on YouTube and won't know the answer to this question, I'm sure, and actually, in all shamelessness, neither do I. But I was gonna ask the LCIF grants, can they only be requested by districts or individual clubs, or can they be requested by other nonprofit organizations who are not affiliated with Lions Club, or is there kind of a in between where they have to be endorsed, I guess, by another club or by a district?
Yeah, so it really has to come from the district. And so there may be some Leo Club grants that can be requested by Leo clubs, but really it's the district that has to give the final approval. And yeah, we cannot work with other organizations, that want money, like a pass-through to get the money, no.
How about for, same question for Bob Lee about an organization that's a nonprofit that might want to ask for a grant from Hawaii Lions Foundation?
We hold the same position as the LCIF. The funding that we provide should be used by the clubs and the Lions for specific programs. We run the same issues with being a pass-through, which is highly illegal and would cause us to lose our 501c3 status. So those types of things we just can't approve because it's an issue with IRS.
Okay, and that's fine. Good. I just wanted to ask the question. But Bob, can you then give us some examples of, say, people who are in various clubs in District 50, some examples of where a Hawaii Lions Foundation might fund a grant or a grant in aid, a matching grant application, maybe from past history, some ideas that you could provide?
Well, I think one of the recent ones, in addition to your PPE program that you guys got funding for, the Honolulu Lions Club had a program to provide learning materials for kids in their schools. So I think Lions, Kenny and Lisa Simmons, through the Honolulu Lions Club, requested funding. I think it was roughly about $1,250 to provide books and other items for a school project, which we funded. Another one is the Honolulu Lions asked funding to provide toys and I think video games for the pediatric cancer section at Queens, if I'm right, Chris? So we provided, grant and aid for that project. Those are the type of things we do. Right now, we're looking at providing a ocular implant for a child who needs them, and the parents can't afford it, and that's being spearheaded by the Waikiki 2000 Lions Club. So those are the types of grants that we look at, and the whole goal is to do what we can to provide these services to the clubs and the community at large.
So the club might work with another organization, but the club is the one that submits the grant application. And the reason I'm asking, for example, Danny Tengan, who's on the call, he does a lot of volunteer work for the food insecure. And could we be working with, say, a facility that, he works with the food distribution, that if the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club said, hey, we want to donate, like, I don't know, say $100 or $200, and then matching and apply for like $400 from
that's a pass-through to another organization. Okay. To write the club a check and you guys write that check to another organization is what's called a pass-through, and it's illegal.
Okay. So the part about the schools, like, so if we buy the food, then it's okay, is that right?
If you buy the food and you donate it,
yeah,
then I don't see any problem with that, because you're providing supplies and services.
Okay.
But
so
you're not
like
providing
buying school supplies.
Yeah, well, they purchase the books and the supplies to give to the kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. How about Sheila? Sheila has.
I have a question for Bob. Do you guys write grants for the Hawaii Lions Foundation to get money?
We do. We're constantly looking for money because we're a poor organization. We're not like LCIF.
Yeah.
We don't have opportunities to raise $300 million. So the foundation has been a little bit more active in seeking external sources of money for the Lions of Hawaii.
Do you ever apply to the Sony Open?
I think we did previously. I think through you folks. I think Lion Jim Bryan was very helpful in getting us a grant at one time. But what we do is we're part of the Friends of Aloha campaign, and we're a recognized recipient. So anybody that donates money to the Aloha for Hawaii campaign, we get a bonus from the Sony Open, basically.
It looks like Alan has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Alan.
Okay, yeah, I have just a general question, or if someone can comment on what are some of the differences, say the pros and cons of being organized as, say, a 501c3 versus, say, Hawaii Kai Lions Club, which is what I understand is a tax-exempt organization.
Well,
Because we actually had some discussion on in the Hawaii Kai Lions Club about, why aren't we organized that way as a 501c3? And someone said, oh, it's humbug because you got to do audits and whatever. But I didn't know, what the benefits are. What we lose out by not being 501c3.
yeah, so there's a 501c3, which your foundation, the Hawaii Cyber Lions Foundation, has, as well as the Kamehameha Lions Foundation. HLF is also, Hawaii Lions Foundation is a 501c3, as well as LCIF. So the biggest power in that is donations made by the community or whoever, individuals, are tax deductible. Your Hawaii Kai Lions Club, for example, your regular Hawaii Cyber Lions Club, Pro City Lions Club, we are called a 501c4 organization. It's an IRS designation. Yeah? You are 501c4, which is an association of members. So we're just part of this big group that we're considered nonprofit. But we don't have to pay income taxes on our income that we receive. Okay? But what that does also is, in a 501c3, there's again a lot of rules. And so you really need to monitor. It is a powerful weapon, but you really need to monitor how you run your foundation, what kind of income you have, how you're spending income. You don't necessarily need audits every year, but you really need to pay attention to the rules. There's unrelated business income tax rules. There's so many different rules that if you do not meet these rules, you can lose your exemption, your 501c3 exemption. So it is an important tool because you can get that deductibility when people donate. A lot of different companies in Hawaii, when they donate to organizations, they want to have that 501c3 letter. And I laud the Hawaii Cyber Club for getting your foundation. And don't lose that determination letter wherever you got it. Make sure you don't lose it.
Yes.
That forever. So leave that letter. But it is a powerful weapon, but it does have a lot of rules. And that's why when the request for grants, there's a lot of stipulations in those grants because they need to meet those rules in order to stay a viable 501c3 organization.
I have a question. Is there anything that prevents a club from just converting to a 501c3, as opposed to having the club and the foundation?
Well, no, as a let's say the Cyber Lions Club, you are a 501c4. A 501c3 that you have as your foundation is a total separate entity in itself. Right,
but is there any prohibition for the Hawaii Kai Lions Club, for example, to not be a C4 and just convert to a C3? Is there something?
It's a lot of paperwork.
If they want to leave Lions Clubs International, then they would drop their charter and just form their own 501c3 organization.
Oh, so you cannot be a 501c3 under the Lions Club International then?
No, you would need to have your own separate.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, sorry, I know kind of late, but I wanted to jump in on kind of the comment that that was made earlier about 501c3 and the process being kind of humbug. The process for setting up a 501c3 actually wasn't nearly as arduous and painful as I had expected it to be. But it does because there are two types of IRS forms that you can fill out in filing to receive your 501c3 exemption. Which form you use is predicated on how much you're anticipating receiving in contributions over the first few years. So I think the form I filled out is we were expecting to receive less than 25,000. If you don't expect to receive up to 25 or above 25,000, then we just submit the form, and then the articles of incorporation, and the other charitable filings with the state for the federal side. But if you're expecting to receive more than 25,000, then you have to submit budget projections, your constitution bylaws, and all your governing documents. So then, and because of that, your review time is going to generally take about 2 to 3 times longer than if you had just filed the shorter, simpler form.
Yeah, a note on that, IRS simplified the process to become a 501c3 recently. So it's a lot easier now to become a nonprofit organization. But like Lion Chris mentioned, it's the work you have to do to maintain that status and responsibilities that come with it. That is the more arduous part of being a 501c3.
And I'd just like to add that in District 50 Hawaii Lines, I got the impression that there are really two camps, Ellen. Like there's a camp that's like pro 501c3 and this camp that's anti 501c3. So it just kind of depends, who you're talking to. And Chris, you're a CPA, right? So if people have questions about that kind of stuff, would you be able to answer them if it's a club that's considering whether or not to become a 501c3 or not, or you can't answer those kinds of questions?
I mean, I can answer general questions. I gave up my CPA-ship to become a roofing contractor.
Okay. Okay. So he can answer questions about roofs now, okay? Okay,
but I have some knowledge of it, and so yeah, if you do have questions, and if I don't know, I will let you know. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. And then there's also like a group, there's a bunch of different Lions clubs in the district that have 501c3s that work, that we could also connect with them and find out how it works for them. And Sheila was such an example that Kamehameha Lions Foundation, you said that they've been in effect for over 15 years now, I think you said.
Yeah.
So could we ask you if we have some questions also, Sheila?
I can find the answer for you if I don't know what it is. It just helps if you have your treasurer as a CPA. That makes it so much easier, and don't let your information lapse. That's the most crucial thing, because then you have to start over again or go back and fill in the gaps. So if you're thinking of doing this, you're putting the hard work at the front end. So keep with it, and it is much easier once you're already established. So.
Because Sheila, that's that 990 card, or I forget the number, but that's that card, right, that you get every year?
Yes.
That's the easy 990 if you make less than $25,000 a year.
Yes. And we have to register with the state too as an entity, but that's real easy, and it's $3.50, and you can do it online, and they make you take a test, but that's the thing that you really have to put on your calendar to keep track of. So it's easy. Don't get overwhelmed by it, because it makes it easier to work with it all during the year.
And I must also want to add to that, even with the people on this call right now, these are people who, go out and find out information and aren't so, daunted by paperwork or figuring things out. Because I think, Chris, you already did that stuff, and he just kind of went through and boom, it's done. We understand that we have to maintain, and we have to, we are in the process also trying to learn the differences and what the key things are that we have to stay focused on as a 501c3 for us. So we would appreciate any help that we could get from other organizations, or like Sheila, if you think of something that we need to watch out for. And Rich Halverson, I think you're nodding, so you probably have some ideas about what things we need to watch out for as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just paying attention. You know, it sounds like the treasurer's got a pretty big job.
Yes.
Yeah, we need a new treasurer.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Anyone?
Not right now, thanks.
Hi, this is Danny.
Danny.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, sorry to go back to the disaster grant. I'm going to be working with VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters. And we have about 15 families that still need assistance from the flooding in March. Most of them in Hauula, some in Haleiwa. How do I apply for something like that?
Well, from LCIF standpoint, we already got a $10,000 grant for that. So I'm not sure at this point how much of that money has been expended. I know other islands have been trying to tap on those grants also, on that grant funding. But again, you have to remember it can only be used to purchase items like water, blankets, clothing, and that type of thing. We're not going to be cutting a check to your organization and you do the work. It has to be a Lions spearheaded event, so to speak. So if you need supplies to be distributed, it really kind of has to be a Lions spearheaded event also. So we cannot basically give you money for that, I guess. And the $10,000 has already been awarded. Unless there is a additional need, we may be able to request more, but that's, you know, you have to take that up with our district governor.
So Chris, are you saying that the district received $10,000 and how the money is spent is up to the district governor, and if there's, you don't know if there's any money left?
Yeah, well, I talked to him the other day and I asked, what about the emergency grant funds? Where is it going? He said he's still working on it, but he understands that it can only be used to, you know, purchase. There's certain restrictions on what we can purchase. And so I reminded him of that fact. And so I'm just trusting that he is judiciously putting together an appropriate plan for this.
Okay, so then for Danny as an example, that if Danny is trying to get this, get some funding for these 15 families, that maybe the Cyber Lions, if we're talking to Danny, and we might want to talk to Bob and say, you know, could we submit a matching grant application where the Cyber Lions want to buy blankets for, you know, a family in Hauula? Can we fill out a matching grant application and ask Bob whether or not that would be a legitimate purpose if we are buying the blankets, for example?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you come in with a grant and aid application as a club, the foundation will consider it. Like Chris mentioned, the disaster relief funding is strictly controlled by the district governor. So, you know, he hasn't made a request for that. So for this particular program, if the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club provided a grant and aid for this, you know, we'd be happy to take a look at it.
Okay. And then what is the process of review for the benefit of those people who don't know?
Well, basically, you come up and you fill out a grant and aid application. So the maximum right now per request is $3,000 at HLF, but you'd have to have a matching amount. So you'd have to come up with $3,000 to get another $3,000 from HLF. So you will detail the details of the project in the grant and aid application and submit that. And
then, like once a quarter, your group reviews it, or do you guys review the applications
we review monthly. The foundation meets monthly.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, I just want to reiterate that it, like, for example, it has to be spearheaded by a Lions Club or Lions, group. And so if the Hawaii Cyber Lions wants to help these particular families, it has to be like a Hawaii Lions Cyber event that we're going to be distributing goods and supplies to needy families. And so it have to be done in that fashion.
So say we would approach a family and we'd say, this is what we would like to do and work with them directly. And it's us trying to do it ourselves.
Yes.
And then,
if the organization identify the families, that's fine, but it has to be a distribution through Lions clubs or Lions members.
Yeah, it has to be a Lions Club project, essentially.
Yeah.
I have a question. As far as the pass-through thing, can Hawaii Cyber Lions raise money for other Lions Clubs projects? So let's say, can Hawaii Cyber Lions raise money for the Hawaii Kai Lions Club's Rescue Tube project?
Certainly.
Okay, so we can raise money to buy rescue tubes for the Hawaii Kai Lions Club, and that's not considered pass-through.
No.
The pass-through concept is basically, okay, you receive $10,000 grant from, let's say, LCIF, and you immediately pass that $10,000 to, let's say, the Red Cross or some other organization. That's really just, so the money is just funneling through. In your case, your example, you're raising funds for a cause and you're distributing it to do for that cause, I guess.
And it's a Lions Club thing.
Yeah, plus you're buying a specific item. You're donating a specific item to the club, which would be the rescue tubes.
Okay, that makes sense.
So just so I'm clear, the differentiation between pass-through and not really is who is purchasing the product, right?
And who is initiating the project?
Yeah, well, there's a little finer line, but I think you got to kind of look at it on a project-by-project basis. But in a particular situation where you guys are thinking of making a donation to the Hawaii Kai Lions Club through a fundraiser, essentially what you're doing is you're buying those rescue tubes and presenting it to the club for distribution. It's not like just writing a check and giving it to them, saying, "Here, do whatever you want to do with it."
Now that's a good idea here. We've got a lot of Hawaii Kai Lions on the call too.
If you guys are planning to do that, just make a check out to the Bob Lee Foundation and.
I was going to say, we got some Chinatown Lions in the club too. Maybe Chinatown has an idea, because Chinatown doesn't have a 501c3 either, yeah?
No, we're too lazy.
Yeah, there we go. How about Ken Dewitt, who is our LCIF coordinator? Does Ken have any questions, or have we talked about so many different 501c3s? It's mind-numbing.
I'm okay for now. Thank you so much, Peggy.
Thank you.
All righty. Any last questions or last comments, thoughts, or? All right, I think that just about wraps up our discussion tonight. Thank you, PDG Bob Lee. Thank you, PDG Chris Tamura, for being our speakers, and thank you for everybody who attended tonight. I hope the conversation material was educational, and I certainly hope that you guys took something away from it and would be of use to you in your service to the communities that you are in.
Tell them to
Peggy, if you want to wrap it up.
Tell them to like our YouTube thing. Your spiel. Give them your spiel.
Yeah, everyone watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button. Don't do it for me though. Do it for the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club, the Hawaii Cyber Lions Foundation, the Lions Club International Foundation, and the Hawaii Lions Foundation.
Thank you.